Hi everybody, and welcome to another Sketch of the Week video. This week's subject is part of my classic rock series that I do on and off and have been for the last couple of years, and this is Ronnie James Dio, who is a late lead singer for a number of rock bands, and we'll just kind of get right into it. So let's take a look at Ronnie's face. He's got a pretty unique look, right? So he's got a very strong brow. Um, I'm going to do him kind of an older Ronnie with the forehead. Like I said, he's got a very strong brow. He's got pretty deep set eyes. He's got kind of a pug nose almost. It's very round, and he's got pretty big nostrils. If you really look at this reference here, where he's in the purple, but because of the angle that I think I'm gonna largely base my caricature on this reference right here, and I think so you don't really see his nostrils too much. I'm gonna cheat that a little bit, I think, so that we can see that. And he's got kind of a big bottom lip. Um, Pretty strong jaw, really strong cheekbones. Um, he's kind of a bizarre looking dude. So we're gonna start out with the head shape. So usually what I think about, right, when I start with head shape is I think about this line that goes across the eyes. And does he have more mass above or below that line? And actually, because of that big forehead, I think he's got just a little bit more mass above. You can certainly exaggerate that head shape with more mass above that line and give him a smaller bottom of a face. He's got kind of this chiseled jaw sort of thing. And his hair is obscuring a lot of the sides of his face and his ears, of course. But let's establish this is a three-quarter view. He's leaning a little bit forward. But this big brow that he's got is really going to be something that I'm going to want to play with here. So, and he's got some pretty intense eyebrows that kind of come down really sharply in the middle. And one of the things about eyebrows too is it's easy to make people look pissed off if you're doing eyebrows that are very arched and come down quite sharply into the area of the bridge structure of the nose, and that's not something I think that I really want. I don't want to make him look angry. He's not really angry looking. It's just kind of intense looking, you know. And so he's got this big bulb of a nose, and I'm going to exaggerate that a bit. But a lot of his look really is this kind of pursed mouth that he's got with this big bottom lip, and it's kind of all off to one side really. And he's got some pretty exaggerated areas here along the sides of his face where his cheekbones are. Like you can really see it in this reference here. Some pretty strong furrows and kind of things on the sides of his face here. But his hair, right? He, especially later in life, Ronnie had a really high forehead, and you can see that you can actually see the curve of his forehead happening, especially in that purple, this one right here. And that's kind of the Ronnie James Dio I remember. I was a big metalhead as a kid. Like my favorite bands were like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and Ronnie James Dio. He had his own band later, Dio, and had quite a few hits. And he was a big name in heavy metal, even though he didn't really front. He was kind of this. I guess you'd call him sort of a freelancer as a singer, and he was often brought in to be the vocals of like a super group, or to take over the vocals for another band. And he had a band very early on in kind of the heavy metal era called Elf, and that was his band primarily. And one of the other things about Dio was he was a little guy. He was like 5'5" or something like that. So he was a really small dude, and he had this huge voice though. And he would be brought in to take over bands, like lead singing. So he was a lead singer for a band called Rainbow, which was Richie Blackmore was like the founding member, one of the founding members, and Richie Blackmore was the guitarist for Deep Purple, and Rainbow was like his sort of getting away from Deep Purple solo band sort of thing. And Dio was the lead singer of that for a while. And then he also was brought in to become the lead singer for Black Sabbath when Ozzy parted ways with them. And it was Black Sabbath really that it kind of introduced me to Ronnie James Dio as a lead singer. I did listen to Rainbow, and which was a good band, but his work on Black Sabbath was really exceptional, and really dug that. And then after Black Sabbath, he started his own band Dio, and he had pretty successful there too. But I remember him mostly from being the lead singer of Black Sabbath, and he really brought something to that band. I really liked the Mob Rules was one of the albums, and Heaven and Hell were one of the albums that were favorites of mine as a kid, and he was lead singer of both of those. So, but yeah, back in my headbanging days. But he's really got a crazy kind of look here. I'm not going to waste a lot of time working on the hair and stuff, and this preliminary sketch, but I kind of find him too to be a little elusive. I mean, would you think he would be a perfect subject for caricature, because he's just got such a crazy look to him, but actually there's so much going on that it's hard to find a focus, and then I'm often finding that I just can't quite capture what I think he looks like in my head, so I've got to be kind of objective about what I'm looking at, but this is working okay. So I think this is probably as far as I'm going to go with my preliminary drawing, and then we'll move over to the drawing board and finish it up. So that one went pretty quick, but he's kind of got a pretty unique look. So, all right, let's head to the drawing board. All right, here we go. We're on the drawing board side of things, and we're going to jump right in here and start rendering. So we've got the drawing has been transferred over, as I always do, using just a light table. And now I'm just going to get in here and start doing the finals. So I just got back from Japan, and had a great time. I'd never been. It was long time on my bucket list of places to go. So it was really cool to get to experience Japan. And I did this Comic-Con, Tokyo Comic-Con, which was ostensibly the excuse for going to Japan. But we stayed
Anna and I stayed for over another week once we were done with the Comic-Con, and got to experience a bit of Japan. We were in Tokyo almost all the time, except for one evening we took the bullet train down to Kyoto and saw that very briefly. Spent a little time down there, just really only one day, and it was really cool. Kyoto might have been my favorite part of the trip. Tokyo is intense. It's like, I've been to New York City many times, and I found Tokyo to be considerably more congested as far as people goes. New York is a busy place, but oh my God, Tokyo is crazy. Going through the train stations and stuff. Really, in New York, you can take cabs, if you want to go somewhere. And depending on the time of day, how long it takes you to get from point A to point B in a cab in New York. And if you know how to use the subway system in New York, it's pretty easy to get around also. But in Tokyo, really, taking a cab anywhere is futile. If it's a 2.5 mile trip, depending on the time of day, it'll take you an hour to go anywhere in a cab in Tokyo. So you definitely need to use the trains, and the trains are pretty easy to use. Like there's a line that just sort of goes in a big circle around the kind of the central part of Tokyo, and then other lines that go offshoot to different places, and it's very inexpensive to take the train anywhere. So maybe to go from, like, we were staying in the Shinjuku area, which is kind of the red light district of Tokyo. I guess you could probably sort of think it's kind of a Times Square sort of area. But there's lots of Times Square sort of areas in Tokyo. So I don't know if that comparison really works. But you can take the subway from Shinjuku, or the train rather, from Shinjuku to, let's say, the Harajuku area, which is like a kind of hip shopping area, for like about 200 yen or 250 yen. And that's not even I don't think that's even $1. It's like 60 cents or I guess it's about $1.20. So, it's just dirt cheap to take the subway anywhere. And it's pretty easy to follow. Like, you think, one of the things about traveling, in a place like Japan is that, unlike if you go to Europe, at least a lot of European countries, their language is Latin based, like English is. So it's even though you might not know the language, it's at least makes sense to you, the words and how they're put together. But in Japan, it's a completely alien compared to a Latin-based country. So their kanji and stuff is indecipherable. It's like, if you don't really know it, if you haven't learned it, you don't just pick it up. I got to the point where I was able to recognize the kanji for like Shinjuku and places like that. But and there's even more than one kind of characters that mean various things in Japanese. So it's tough. But ever since they had the Olympics there, the Winter Olympics, all the train stations have English in all over. So you don't have to, you're not staring at a bunch of totally indecipherable characters. So that helps greatly. And a lot of people in Japan also speak English, but your smartphone is your friend when you're traveling in a place like that. When trying to take like the train, for example, I used Apple Maps almost exclusively for all the getting from point A to point B, and you just it's like in the U.S. you put in where you're trying to go, what the destination is, and from your current location. But if you select transit for the directions, it'll tell you exactly what train to take, exactly what station to go to, exactly what train to take, even down to what platform you're supposed to be on, and what time the next train is that you're likely to be able to get to, depending on how long it'll take you to walk to the station from your location. I mean, it really is that good. And the trains in Tokyo run like clockwork. I mean, they're never late, or very, very seldom late. And if they're more than a minute late, it's like that's unusual. So they're very punctual, and getting around was really easy. We were there with a few people who had been several times to Tokyo Comic Con. Steve McGarry and his son Luke, both cartoonists. They had been there many times. I think this is their fourth trip to do Tokyo Comic Con, and so they knew their way around and were very generous with their time and stuff, so that they would help us out, telling us where to go and things to do. And a lot of times we did stuff together with those guys. Although since they'd been so many times, there was a lot of stuff that we wanted to do that they'd already done multiple times. So we ended up going to do our own thing here and there. But it was a great trip, and unfortunately, I didn't get together with the local caricature artists from Japan, because as a member of what's now the International Society of Caricature Artists, the Japanese caricature artists are a big part of that organization. And there's one gentleman in particular, and his name is Kahei, and he owns a lot of caricature operations and businesses and stands around Japan. And he's got one of his main stores is in Asakusa, the Asakusa area of Tokyo. And I went and visited that, and I visited his stand, and in fact I got my caricature drawn there, which was a lot of fun. And you'll read about that in my newsletter here this week, to kind of tell the story about how the caricature I got drawn and all that. But I never did hook up with Kaihei, who I've met many times, and who's a great guy and super talented, unfortunately. Being there with a bunch of other people, we had things that we were doing together that we weren't quite free to just be able to just go off and do. So I wasn't able to get together with Kaihei, which I very much regret. I wish I would have been able to figure that out. But so next time, Kaihei will certainly meet with you and get to meet some of your artists. But caricature is big in Japan. Like, there's lots of stands doing them, and they've had there's been some game shows on TV that feature caricature, and it's really interesting how they do it. And the Japanese artists, of course, are super talented. The ones that they do in their little stands, they've got like different types of exaggeration levels that you choose, which is something you don't usually see here in the States. So that's pretty interesting. And like I said, I wrote about it in the newsletter, so you can read about it. But that was pretty cool. And The Comic-Con itself was interesting. Unfortunately, we were not in a very good area, I don't think. And, you know, Mad Magazine isn't something that I don't think was ever very popular in Japan, so I don't think a lot of Japanese people really recognized Mad as a thing. There are a lot of Americans in Japan. There's several military bases throughout Japan, and so there are a number of American families and people that are stationed there. And I also met a lot of Westerners that were just transplants that had gone and visited Japan and fallen in love with the culture and the area and moved there. And so I met a few people like that who were familiar with Mad, but mostly it was just, you know, I didn't do a whole lot of commissions or anything. It was just a chance to experience that culture and be there. So that was fun. But yeah, the Comic-Con itself was not very successful for us. But that wasn't why we went, so it wasn't a big deal. So Ronnie is coming together here, but his hair is going to take forever to do. This is some of the toughest kind of hair to draw, in my opinion, is the haphazard, like long, scraggly sort of hair that doesn't have much of a real solid structure in itself. It just is just these kind of wispy sort of things, and like I always say with hair, you don't want to draw the hairs, you want to draw the shapes the hairs are creating, but there's very, very little really distinct shapes being created by this hair, because it's just this haphazard, you know, tiny little bushy sort of things going on, and so there's no big locks or there's no big shapes, so I have to sort of look at where the shadows are happening. So it's nice and dark against his face right in here, but you know, it's just going to be, I'm going to be trying to create kind of a texture of hair. Some of his other hairdos, like as a younger guy, he had, you know, more of the 80s rocker hair, but I'm not doing that. I'm doing this sort of older, kind of scragglier version of his hair. But I think I'm just going to go in and do some cross-hatching, get some shadows going in here, and then we'll finish it up so this video doesn't get to be too long. Like I said, he's got very dark eye sockets, or very deep eye sockets, and so that creates a lot of shadow right in this area. He's got this odd pursed mouth, a pretty big bottom lip, and his mouth is crooked. It goes off to this side a bit. I got to tell you that doing these drawings in this video kind of setting is difficult for me. I'm a lot farther back away from my drawing board than I would like to be, because there's a camera between me and, you know, and the drawing. So it for me, it is kind of difficult to do these, and I think that it does affect the way the drawing turns out. And let's see. Not exactly ideal, but kind of doing a little, I'm basing some of his posture and stuff on this reference that you see, and even though the face is kind of coming from a different reference and a different what I want want to say here. Not perspective, but angle, I guess. But that's the beauty of doing a drawing instead of using photographs, right? You can change things, make it unique. So Ronnie James Dio was such an interesting character. He actually was quite old for, he died of some kind of cancer, but he was an older guy when it came to being part of the heavy metal scene. Like he got his start back in the 50s, not as a heavy metalist, obviously, but as a singer, and he never had any formal training, but he had a really big voice, like very unique too, but it was powerful, and it was just so strange to hear this great big huge voice coming out of this little diminutive man, just 5.5 feet tall. I don't think he was even that tall. So he was just this little guy, and he sang for all these huge bands and was highly well respected. And this whole devil's horn thing that he's doing with his hand, he's reputed to have come up with that. It was something that his grandmother used to do, or something to ward off the evil eye, or something or another. And so he kind of adopted that, and of course that's a ubiquitous thing in the heavy metal world, is the Satan's horns, or whatever you want to call it. And that was something that he reportedly was brought to the genre. And so, and he never had any, according to what I've read, he never had any formal vocal training, despite having this gigantic voice, and that he credited his learning to play the trumpet as a kid to the reason that the source of his vocal prowess, because it was about learning to breathe properly when you play an instrument like the trumpet. That he learned to control his breath, and that led to the way that he sang, and so he was quite an interesting guy. And I did love the work that he did with Black Sabbath. I thought that was just really terrific albums, and totally different, of course, than when Ozzy sang with them. But well, I think we're probably getting to the point here where I can just finish up the rest of this hair and stuff on my own, and call it a day. But glad to be back. Happy to be back home from Japan. As much fun as I had. Kind of back to normal next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the sketch. That my newsletter comes out on Christmas Day, so I think we're just going to have a Christmas edition without too much sketching or whatever. I might not even do a sketch of the week next week. But so there's Ronnie, almost finished. Appreciate all you people who are subscribers, paid subscribers, premium subscribers to the channel. Greatly appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.